I'm Mort Cooper, your host on Change Your Voice, Change Your Life. In studio with me, the honored, prestigious Dr. John Curtis, the spin doctor, who, folks, is all too often spun himself, as I am. We're all spun by things around us because we're heir to information that we believe is accurate, coming from the tube, from radio, from television, from friends, associates, and enemies, and so forth. And we are spun by misinformation. We misrepresent what is, or they do, and then we live with myths and misconceptions ourselves. You got to be kidding about what's going on. Part one of Change Your Voice, Change Your Life. Dr. Curtis, what do you want to be kidding about today?
Well, the biggest, I think, kidding for people, I think, has to do with them just buying what other people tell them. Mm-hmm. If somebody has a white coat on and you walk into their office and they have dials and they're got high tech, people tend to believe them. If you operate with a shopping cart mentality, you have no credibility at all. So you're asking people to believe in options. I mean, you look at the treatment of these voices, these troubled voices, and you ask yourself, how can people with any kind of logic take a dangerous toxin, botulinum toxin, something that was packed into the warheads of Scud missiles, and do that to themselves? You're
talking about Botox. It's put out by Allergan. It's a very fine company. They believe that the strangled voice, spasmodic dysphonia. Henry Fonda had it. I worked with him and helped him to get his voice back. He went on to do On Golden Pond, got an award for that. Shadow Stevens had the condition. He got his voice back. What I do, he called it hilariously simple, and it works. The people in the medical community are of the view that there are no cures of the strangled voice and or bowed vocal cords per se by direct voice rehabilitation. I reported on that in a textbook years ago on cures of it. But the problem is that they live by a paradigm. They live by a theory, folks, and you're not going to change theories. Unfortunately, a lot of people have body armor. Wilhelm Reich, a psychiatrist, wrote about body armor. It cannot be pierced. That's what you're saying.
Well, the paradigm is not just one of a medical paradigm. We're talking about a paradigm of just human thinking. And a well-known individual used to call it stinkin' thinking. And stinkin' thinking, he used to say, is you can't think for yourself. If somebody tells you, well, God told you to do something, your physician told you to do it, your mother told you to do it, take this bromide, this formula, this pill, this drug, do what somebody says rather than to rely on common sense, which is not very common.
What is common sense?
It's not very common for people any longer.
No, common sense is a tough number, isn't it, folks? How can you have common sense when you're fed information that, in a sense, sets you up to think in a certain direction? David Reisman of Harvard called it inner-directed, outer-directed, and other-directed, which means very few people are inner-directed. They really rely on themselves. Hopefully they have facts and information to make decent judgments. Other-directed, people listen to other people, what they say, what they think, and they don't have inner direction. There are three: inner, other, and outer-directed. Well, and outer is the whole society. David Shore's talking about the Hollywood scene, with lying as a pervasive thing in the movie industry.
Well, it comes down to really what is factual, what is real to people. And, reality is an internal phenomenon. There really is no such thing as an external world out there, because you've got human organisms processing information in a way with their own distortions. And, as you said, as Wilhelm Reich, said, with body armor, with a lot of defenses. I like to help people to see options so they can see what's good for them, what isn't good for them, whether it's somebody blowing smoke up their rear ends, in financial markets, whether it's in the healthcare industry, whether it's in politics. I mean, right now President Clinton has got his foot caught in the doo-doo again, and it had to do with his pardon of Mark Rich. And everybody knows that billionaires, millionaires, I mean, they carry around a bag of money, and most people like to dig into the money. Clinton has made a statement right now. He's made a categorical statement. He waved his finger again, which should alert people. Be very careful when Clinton raises his finger, like he
did that with Monica Lewinsky.
He did not have sexual relations with that woman. Of course, she had sexual relations with him, but he didn't have sexual relations with her.
Clinton is a lawyer. People forget that.
Well, I mean, and he's a damn good one, too. He's one of the better lawyers, actually.
He can't practice for 3 years now.
Well, I mean, he's handcuffed right now, but he's handcuffed because of his own doing. But look, he made a public statement that said that there isn't one shred of evidence that that he basically took a bribe on this deal with Mark Rich. There's not one shred of evidence. Now, he's not saying that he didn't take a bribe. What he's saying is that there's no evidence. Now, most people, when they regard, evidence and a fact are very related to each other. Do you realize that? Facts and evidence. You ever hear the expression, do not assume facts that are not in evidence? Okay. What does it mean, a shred of evidence? It means there's a tape recording, a testimony, sworn testimony of somebody else, maybe DNA evidence on somebody. This is all evidence. Clearly, this is a very early stage of this investigation. But when you've got a guy that's a renegade, a billionaire, he's a carpetbagger to the max. He's engaged in oil deals with Iran at a time that we were at war with them. And I'm not being critical of the man and engaging in his business. I'm not even being critical of him for evading a minimum of $48 million in taxes, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars. The guy's been very successful. Don't knock success. The bottom line for people is, what does it mean when somebody says something? How can you trust what it is that they're saying? How do you know that you're not being buffaloed? And the truth is that much of what you hear today, whether it's somebody selling you a car, kicking the tires on a car, with a politician telling you that they're sorry for writing letters to get drug dealers off, you have to look very suspiciously at the content of what's being said.
If we can pick this up, our director here, the eminent Mr. Katz, we want this to zero in on it, if we can. We get that on the screen. Can that come in? And can you see it? Is it clear? If you bring it in real close, you can see the print on that. And it's interesting. We want somebody who's excited about our products, as the Acme Shoe Company. Dr. Curtis is very taken with politics and corruption, and he strikes me as a skeptic and a cynic in a world where we need optimism. And I just believe that we should look forward to a wider scene. If you can pick this cartoon up. These cartoons are from the Wall Street Journal. We want this on the screen. Can we get that on the screen? And it is saying something which is very interesting. I'll read it to you. We'll put it back on the screen in a minute. Good news, Mr. Ferguson. The man is in bed. Your insurance does cover needless surgery. Let's take a look and see if you can see that one. Can you pick that up? We have that. Is the camera picking that up very clearly so the audience can see that?
How do you define a needless surgery? If your physician tells you you need it, doesn't that by definition mean that you need it?
Yes.
If your doctor told you, and he's already told you, that you need bypass surgery, why are you resisting bypass if your physician's told you?
Because a large number of people who have it die, and a large percentage have severe repercussions where they're not mentally agile or themselves again after the procedure. So
you know that it does cause brain damage. You know that there's research now that indicates that.
I was wondering why you didn't react to the skeptic charge and to the cynic charge when I said that of you. You let that pass.
I'm eternally an optimistic person. I mean, I'm very positive about these things. I trust everybody.
So you reject that
no, I mean,
description.
Well, I mean, I believe that opening your eyes is a painful process for a lot of people. That's why a lot of people.
And you're willing to accept.
I think
what is and open your eyes.
When it comes to products and American business selling you products, whether it's hamburgers or whether it's a drug like Viagra, and telling women that they have human female sexual dysfunction can be corrected with the male potency drug Viagra. I think that people have to sit back, realize that the pharmaceutical company likes to get a drug originally approved for a certain condition and then they like to extend it to a variety of other conditions.
Of course.
Have you seen the way that works?
Of course, they would do that with Prilosec for
Prilosec is a
heartburn
great
and
example.
indigestion, and works very well. Then they have extended it to bad and raspy voices, which it really doesn't fit the requirement. Bad and raspy voices come from misuse, talking in a lower throat. I did a study on that, and I have over 1,000 cases in the textbook to indicate it's misuse. It's not from reflux acid coming from the stomach up to the vocal cords.
But
there's no money in it for the pharmaceutical company.
They conduct scientific research, don't they? And they have a study, as a matter of fact, that indicates that Prilosec does work well. Actually, I think they've indicated that it has 99% effectiveness.
No, I'm not sure. No, that's Botox. That's
Botox.
poison. The state. Let me just explain. The medical field and Allergan, and they're a fine company, and the medical profession is a fine outfit, are of the view that botulinum toxin, it's a nicknamed Botox, a deadly poison, is a state-of-the-art treatment of strangled voices that Henry Fonda had or Shadow Stevens had, and people should know that it's 99% effective. I find it just quite ineffective, but that's my experience and so forth. And I report cures of it. They don't have a cure. But the other aspect is that Merck, the maker of Prilosec, is doing very well, fantastically well, and they've extended the use of Prilosec to bad and raspy voices, which I don't find to be caused by reflux. It's caused by misuse and
you see
abuse.
nothing wrong with that. When a pharmaceutical company originally gets a drug approved, but with their scientific research published in all the fancy journals for a specific treatment, you don't find it odd that they're extending the drug to other conditions which may have a spurious treatment too.
Sir, Dr. Curtis, they have families, they have mortgages on their homes. This is an entrepreneurial society. Can you say that word, entrepreneurial?
Oh, I can say it just fine.
And that's what our society is about. If our director can hone in on this one and take a look and see what it says, come closer on this one, Mr. Katz, if you will. Can you come closer on this one and take a look at what it's saying on the screen? Thank you. It says a great deal. Can you read what it says, Dr. Curtis? Or do you want me to read it for the audience?
You should read it from there.
Okay, I'll read it to the audience. Two guys leaving the Capitol building, the Senate building. Does it hurt to vote your conscience? Does it hurt to vote your conscience? We're not in a society today that looks to conscience. We're concerned with the bottom line. There was a story about a fellow, a medical doctor, who said that antibiotics were bad for kids. They froze him out. Oh, he has tenure. Was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Isolated him. Now they're finding out what he said is right. But that's the way life goes.
You society expects obedience.
Yes.
If you're disobedient, you know that you've learned this as a child. You get slapped very quickly. As a matter of fact, disobedience. I mean, you can lose your entire career. Look what's happened to Mr. Cruz Bustamante, the lieutenant governor. He was delivering his speech to some African Americans, and he claimed that it was inadvertently used the N-word, which is a very pejorative, negative term against African Americans. And created massive controversy, for them. And
we're filled with these
but you think that it's
negative terms. They're on the basketball court. When I played basketball, I heard blacks call blacks the N-word. People on the inside relate to these terms, not in a negative way per se. They resent it if you're not in the group that they're in.
Do you think it's possible to have a politician who is a public speaker inadvertently use a word? Does that sound plausible to you? In other words,
I think he's inundated with the term throughout his life, so it will pop out.
Why would somebody be inundated with a
because he grows up on the streets,
racist term?
You hear these terms; they're all over. They're in locker rooms. They're everywhere.
Well, Mark Furman, they claimed, used that term. F. Lee Bailey got him during the O.J. trial to admit that, he denied using the term.
Yes, I remember.
They had evidence, and they discredited him on that basis. And as you know, the whole prosecution's case went down the tubes.
But you have to be kidding about these terms. They're used everywhere. What is his name?
Cruz Bustamante, respected Lieutenant Governor of California.
These terms are used in private. They move over to the public.
You don't subscribe
Jesse
to
Jackson called it Jaime Land.
Jaime Town.
Jaime Town.
He referred to that New York City as Jaime Town.
I think it has its humor.
But he's
to
a reverend. He would never say anything like that.
It has its humor in its characterization. People characterize each other in ways. They want a thumbnail, nutshell description, and they've been put down themselves, whether it's Jesse Jackson or anybody else.
That violates the fundamental rule of political correctness today. You can't do that. You say you could commit an axe murder or a chainsaw murder, but if you use a racial epithet or some slur, that they can destroy your career. It's happened to many different people. Why should it be any exception with Cruz Bustamante? The right wingers right now are claiming that he's getting preferential treatment. They're coddling him when in fact he's committed the unpardonable crime. This is unforgivable action of using a racial epithet.
Do you think he's an isolate? Do you think he's singular? Dr. Curtis.
Or do I
it's
think
all over the
commonplace?
Yeah, it's very commonplace. I was interviewed on a top radio station, and the gentleman was having a conversation with an Afro-American, and during the break, he referred to this gentleman that he referred to very genially and civilly in the N-word. So
you didn't find that offensive?
I find it offensive. I find it outrageous. But this is what goes on, and this is what goes on in our society. It has a veneer of civility, but beneath the veneer are a lot of negativities.
Because there is a sort of wallpaper-like quality to different people's lives. When you create a studio, like we're in a studio right now. We're actually doing a show, but we don't really we deliberately avoid the backdrops or the what's beneath.
Well, why don't you tell the truth?
We do that
Dr.
for a reason.
Curtis, no. The real reason is we can't afford a real bag. What's in
Well,
your
we
mind?
could put some plants behind us or something.
Yeah.
But the real reason for that is so that you can tune in on the dialogue rather than focus in on the backdrop. It's very easy to put window dressing out there. If you have an office and somebody has high-tech dials and they have white coats that they come out and treat you, automatically the inference is that you're going to be helped, right? But then you don't know that your brain is short-circuited at that point. And you go into autopilot, become automatically obedient. We're asking people to sort of use their brains in an analytical way. I mean, if you've ever had the
you want
experience
people
of
to
being
think for
told,
themselves. It's very difficult to do. I'm not putting anybody on, down, and around. It's very difficult to do because we're spun. You're the spin doctor, and you yourself, you acknowledge that you yourself are spun time and again, as I am. We find out later the information that we have is not factual. In fact, it's so unfactual, so inept, so mythological, that we're in deep doo-doo doing what we have done.
Well, as a matter of fact, it's deliberately designed that way by certain clever propagandists who have their...
Designed or not, that's the reality.
Give you false information in order to send you down a garden path.
Well,
I mean, they're not.
Do you think
they're not interested? McDonald's is not interested in whether you have high cholesterol. Let's be honest about it. Philip Morris could care less whether you're choking with COPD eventually. I don't know if you're cognizant how many people die of lung cancer a year, but lung cancer is only a very small fraction of the deaths related to cigarette smoking. Now
there are 400,000 deaths a year.
I was in a civil proceeding, as an expert. And the the cross-examining attorney.
They're going to ask you the simple question: are you a medical doctor?
Well, you're like psychic. You're going to say that, but that's not all they asked me. They did ask me that question whether I was a medical doctor. I said no. I have more questions for the doctor. He said, "Isn't it true, Dr. Curtis? Isn't it true that it's possible that something other than cigarette smoking could have caused the death of the patient that I was providing treatment to?"
Isn't it possible? Of course.
Isn't it possible? So I said yes. And so he said, "I have no further questions of the witness."
All right. I want to pursue that just for a
Now,
moment.
the inference it's created is, well, that must mean he made his point, and the jury has to take that under advisement.
Well, he's a lawyer.
The reality is that he was spinning.
Yeah, he's spinning. He's representing.
He was giving you
and they want to win at any cost. The truth is not the issue in court. It's who can influence the jury. Now,
well, it's who can beat up the jury.
Yeah,
and
who
can
beat up
twist
the
their
jury.
arm, bend their thinking in order to transform it. Look, when
It is said that justice is blind.
well, justice is served. I was told this by a very respected attorney. He said justice is served when the attorney is paid.
Yes.
That taught me something, because it was a very, I mean, that sounds very cynical to people because they really believe in fairness.
I like this cartoon. Folks, if you can tune into this cartoon and see if we can get this on the screen. We have Dr. Curtis's books on there. Now we have this cartoon, if you can pick that up. I think it's a fascinating comment on this, if you can see it. And I'll read it to you if you have any questions here. The gentleman is at the board showing the chart, and he's saying, the bad news is our fund lost millions. The good news is none of it was our own money. Now, as long as it's not their own money, they're willing to have a very genial whack at investing your money or representing you in court. They don't go to prison if they lose. You do.
Now, in fairness for investors, I have to draw your attention to something, and that is this idea that people really want it. Right now, everybody's down on the stock market because stock market's done fairly poorly over the last year, and so they're trashing it. And they're saying that all stockbrokers are con artists and whatever. And I think that that's not really the case, because if anybody who thinks about just any market for that matter, if we have right now we have an energy market, and they say that the demand way exceeds the supply. How true that is remains to be seen. We do know that prices rise when demand exceeds supply. We also know that when there's a lot of when interest rates are high and people
Curtis, can you get to the bottom line on this?
The bottom line is that if you sit in your home, you own a piece of real estate, your property goes up and down depending on what the market is.
Yeah.
You never think about it. You do with stocks because there's values placed to it. But there's no difference in any market.
There is. Curtis, I like Curtis. He's a spin doctor. I find that if I buy stocks, I'm spun. I'm not told the realities. One of the stocks, one of the bonds I bought went belly up. And who collected first? The banks. I never knew the banks collect first, not the stockholder. That's interesting. And that was just in the Wall Street Journal. So it's very important to have information. Beside which, the insiders know much more than you do, or I do, or Dr. Curtis does. But this is an interesting cartoon from the Wall Street Journal. They have great stuff in the Wall Street Journal. I subscribe to it, and to the LA Times and the New York Times and the Atlantic Monthly and Washington Monthly and a lot of other stuff. It's fascinating to read what goes on. If you can read this, it's on the screen, and I think you could see it. And I'll read it to you again. It says, Chuck teaches voodoo economics at the university. And there's a picture of Chuck there as the voodoo. I believe there was a gentleman by the name of, who was it, Bush, who called it voodoo economics? Who would call it voodoo economics?
I believe it was George W. Bush's father.
Yeah.
Who referred to Ronald Reagan's economic program that was devised by a fellow by the name of Arthur Laffer. That's with two F's and not a UH, which was a supply side theory, which had to do with trickle down economics. And he did say at the time that that Reagan's economic program would quadruple the debt and lead to nearly bankrupting the country. And he took over office in 1980 with a budget deficit, I believe it was $60 billion that Carter had he'd inherited from Carter, and I think he left office with, I think it was in the $260 billion range.
It's chicken feed in today's society. We're taxed galore. I wonder myself when I pay taxes, is this real? There's tax on everything. It doesn't end. It's endless. I'm almost at the point of joining the Republican Party with the tax situation.
Did you hear that the most recent opposition, and I think
yes,
I think you should be. I think people should be aware, and this is a great example of spin. Is that the impressions created? Well, all Republicans are all part of the same fence, are all on the same team. With regard to the tax cuts, there have been defections among Republicans right now, not going along with Bush's tax plan. Now, why is that?
That's the death tax.
No, not just that. Well, they've abandoned the death tax. I mean, any kind of death tax reform. They've abandoned the marriage penalty, and now they're basically abandoning the income tax reductions that Bush is calling for.
So he ran on a ticket that is not viable.
Well, he ran on an illusory platform that created a carrot for people to get whipped up about and follow him, but would never get through Congress because Congress is never going to vote themselves out, vote themselves less income, and they don't make money. They just take money, and they take money from the people. They turn you upside down. They turn me upside down every year, and that's the way things work. And you know, however much money the government pays for a coffee pot or any other piece. Look, Cheney made a very in the last debates. I mean, it was a very I think telling statement he made to Joe Lieberman in this debate. He said that he told Lieberman that he's made all his money in the private sector, and he's going to help Lieberman get into the private sector, meaning that he's going to beat them in the election. And the funny thing is that he works for Halliburton Company, which is a huge oil contract.
Worked.
He worked for Halliburton Company.
Yeah, he made a fortune. And he got all kinds of options.
But
we only have a few seconds
he
left.
He made millions. The bottom line, okay, is that Cheney got all his money in Halliburton from the government contracting.
You're very cynical and skeptical. Dr. Curtis does not have that sense of openness and generosity that you and I would have. If you can make money, why not? And if you happen to be out there and you make millions and millions and so forth, and what's wrong with that? You said you like success. Thank you very much, Dr. Curtis. Spin Doctor. Spin Doctor. I'm Mort Cooper. You got to be kidding. Bye-bye.